President Trump set to travel to Houston, Texas today to headline a Republican National Committee fundraiser for GOP Senate nominee Ken Paxton. Trump's visit to the Lone Star State will focus on raising money for Paxton's campaign after it spent the majority of its funds in a bruising primary election against incumbent Senator John Cornyn. Trump endorsed Paxton in that primary race, and today's trip is meant to show donors the president is still standing by him. Paxton's going to need all the money he can get as he faces off against Democratic State Representative James Tallarico in a race where the Cook Political Report recently shifted its rating from lean Republican to toss-up. Just stunning, given the ways that Democrats have really treated Texas like their white whale over the years. Maybe this is the moment. We'll see. New polling says something's going on, though, because Tallarico, it shows, with a solid lead over Paxton in 3 competitive congressional districts that President Trump won by double digits in 2024. This is according to the latest poll from Texas Southern University. Tallarico is up, for example, in the state's 15th congressional district, represented by a Republican that Democrats are hoping to knock off in the House race. But in this district in 2024, Trump won by 18 points. Tallarico is also leading by double digits in the 28th and 34th districts, also Trump areas. It's there I want to start with White House reporter for Politico, Alex Gangitano. Alex, good morning. It's great to have you. You reported last week about Republicans in Texas basically telling the president that he needs to take charge of this race since the Paxton endorsement in the primary. Is this the White House's first step? And is this the candidate, Paxton, with his many controversies, that Trump wants to really put his mark on and stake his claim to?
Yeah, that's right. Talking to longtime Republican donors, there was a very much of you broke it, you bought it, you get to buy it response to Trump about Paxton in this Tallarico race. That's because a lot of them are longtime John Cornyn fans. They know that Cornyn's a great fundraiser. He's been in that seat for so long. And it was quite the surprising and stunning move when the president went ahead and endorsed Paxton, leading him to win that primary. So donors are saying, we're going to go spend elsewhere. We'll be in North Carolina. We'll be in Ohio to help Republicans there. You can handle Texas. And so this is that first step. We're going to see this evening when the president arrives in Houston, him do this RNC fundraiser to boost Paxton. He'll be spending MAGA Inc. money there. He's already put some of his over $400 million war chest that he's been holding for a while now. Some of that money will be going to Paxton directly. And so at this point, it's a lot of, yes, he's trying to show donors, I've got this one. I'll be on the ground there. But also, what more can he do? Because as you mentioned, that race is at a toss-up. It's at a dead heat at this point. And that's a huge one that Republicans are watching very closely.
Watching closely, and I obviously talked to Senator Ted Cruz earlier this week, and I asked him about this race. Just the way that he said, I think we'll win, but it's serious, it's close, Republicans need to be investing in it. I mean, it's a stunning way for a Texas senator to be talking about a state that is Trump country, is ruby red, and that Democrats have quested after for years and never been able to make the kinds of tangible wins that they want at the presidential or statewide level. I also wonder, because when I talked to Cornyn during the primary, he said Paxton was going to be the kiss of death for Republicans. He did not just mean in the Senate contest, because there's a down ballot drag to this when I start seeing those Tallarico numbers in places like Monica De La Cruz's district in Texas 15. So can you talk about the down ballot implications here that Republicans might be worried about?
Right. I think Democrats are looking at that down ballot implications really closely, too, of can Tallarico help boost some of these congressional candidates and get some flips here? But yes, Republicans are worried. Who did we put at the top of the ticket? Again, this all comes to President Trump and his endorsement and how important that was to put Paxton over the edge in Texas. Of course, he waited last minute. Paxton was polling a bit ahead. He put him over the edge. And so is that going to impact some of these other important swing districts? The House is, of course, what Republicans are the most worried about losing at this point. Can a couple Texas seats put that over the edge? And then, of course, in the Senate, they're going to have to pick up elsewhere if Tallarico can pull this off. Of course, you mentioned this is the Democrats' kind of white whale for a long time. Of course, it would be quite the defeat. But if Tallarico can pull this off, where else do Republicans have to do well in? Is it Michigan? Of course, holding on to Ohio, holding on to North Carolina. It just puts so much pressure on these other states, just like it puts pressure on these down ballot House races, too.
And I think it's just such a reminder of what an active map it is. And as we talk about the down ballot House races, we cannot forget that Texas is the place that touched off the mid-decade redistricting battle in hopes of giving themselves 5 more seats. And I think that there is some conversation about how solidly red some of those theoretically red seats actually are. But then there's also the looming plan that the president seems to have come up with, Alex, of how to win the midterm elections, which is more Trump. That's according to some new reporting from The Atlantic, the outlet reporting the president gathered top political advisors in the Oval Office this month to discuss how to spend his super PAC's $400 million ahead of the midterms before ultimately landing on the strategy of focusing on himself, ordering a series of television advertisements about his own record that will serve as a backdrop to the hundreds of individual House and Senate contests. People familiar with the discussions tell The Atlantic an ad blitz is set to be rolled out soon from MAGA Inc. It comes as the president's approval rating has fallen, though, to record lows, including on key issues like the economy. And it might be what's informing the fact that even some of the president's most loyal supporters seem to be showing signs of fatigue. I want to play for you what one Trump voter in Iowa had to say about the president. Watch.
President Trump promised to bring down prices. You voted for him 3 times. Are you disappointed?
Very disappointed. Very disappointed.
Why?
Because the prices haven't gone down. I don't know. I'm over it, I think. Over the Trump thing. The Trump wagon, whatever you want to call it.
You could talk directly to the president about the war, about the prices, about the economy. What would you tell him?
Stop the bullshit. Make America great, like you said. That's what I'd say.
So, Alex, that's my colleague, Alex Tabbitt, at the Iowa State Fair, one of my favorite state fairs. But I've had similar conversations with Trump voters who say, I just feel like I didn't get what I voted for this time. And if that's the vibe check on the ground, what does it say when you have the White House saying, nope, the best midterm message is actually more Trump?
That's right. It's a fascinating disconnect that the White House is saying here. Here's what we should spend this MAGA money on. It's just touting the president's record. It's not touting these different candidates. It's not saying what could this candidate bring to this state. It's what has the president done? And of course, they're trying to run on this message of we brought a coalition together in 2024. Let's try to get them back. Let's bring the enthusiasm back. Let's get these MAGA loyalists to the voting booth come November. Now, of course, there's a lot of disillusioned MAGA people, whether that's in the sense of the war in Iran and the economy, all the above, tariffs, whatever it is that these voters are saying, actually, my enthusiasm for the president has gone down. This is a midterm election. Do they even show up? I think what's also an interesting thing is in less than a couple of weeks, we're going to see a big midterm convention in Texas where the president will be for 2 days. He'll be giving a big keynote speech. The president is likely going to talk about his own record during that. Of course, he could mention some candidates, but, we hear a lot of these speeches out of the president, and this is, here's what I've done. And that's going to be the same kind of deal that they're trying to get these MAGA loyalists to show up and be excited come November. Is that going to work, or is focusing on these specific candidates going to work in order to just get people to vote in November to bring that coalition back in 2024? That seems to be chipping away with a lot of these different policies and agenda items of the president.
Yeah, it's a tenuous coalition, I think, at this point. Plus, I am forced to wonder if the president starts seeing Republicans fare badly in polls closer to the midterms. Does he start detaching his name from their reelection bids? And that sort of blows up the entire strategy and leaves them to fend for themselves. I think that that's probably what they should prepare for. White House reporter for Politico, Alex Gangitano, thank you, as always.